I was 18 when I had my first abortion. I got pregnant the very first time I had sex. I wish somebody had told me that the first time I had sex I would get pregnant. I wish that somebody had told me that that man who I thought was my knight in shining armor would end up betraying me and his child in choosing not to father or be a part of that baby's life. I also wish somebody would have told me that the $300 that I paid for that abortion didn't make my life simpler or solve my problem as I was told it would, but it would actually cause me more complications. My choice was being based on being frightened, being shocked, very self-seeking, deserving, irresponsible, and worried about what my parents or my neighbors or my friends might think. And yet my parents tell me today that if I had been honest with them and told them, they probably would have understood and helped me raise my son. I wish somebody would have told me that life is about choices, and the pro-choice that I was making would actually turn out to be a poor choice. I wish somebody had told me that Planned Parenthood and family planning wouldn't know the first thing about caring for one of their patients. And I wish somebody would have told me that I could have gotten off the table when I realized it was too late or that I was making a mistake. The procedure was not like the removal of a tooth. I don't regret going to the dentist. And I wish somebody would have told me that I would have felt appalled with myself after the procedure as I walked out the back door of the clinic. I wish somebody would have told me that there was so much physical and emotional pain involved, not just then, but 23 years later, and that one day I would truly regret the choice I was making. I wish somebody had told me that not only would I blame myself for my own abortion, but for the abortion that I was involved with when I drove my girlfriend to get hers. I wish somebody had told me that grief, guilt, and shame would take over my life emotionally, and that at each anniversary date I would feel numb and unable to move, and that I would later consider suicide twice based on the fact of my choice. I wish someone had showed ultrasound to me so that I knew that my fetus really wasn't just a blob of tissue, because when 7 years later I was pregnant with my son Davis, who is now 17, the hardest part of being pregnant with him was watching those ultrasounds every month and seeing something grow inside of me, which I knew I terminated 7 years prior. I wish someone had told me that I would never be able to have other children after being raped and having a second abortion when my son was 2. I also wish somebody had told me that I would be forced to have an emergency hysterectomy due to the complications that was caused to my uterus after the second abortion. I wish someone had told me that my life would just be completely different. I'm glad that when I finally did admit my sin and go through a recovery program, that there was healing in Christ and that I could be forgiven for the sins that I committed. That an accepting heart and compassion of a few select women could assist in the healing of my disgrace. And that healing program would release me from 23 years of guilt and shame and grief. You know, I'm glad that somebody did tell me that God was in the room with me during my abortions. He held my hand through both procedures and personally carried my children home to heaven, because that vision keeps me going every day. And that through God I could name my children, Dylan and Dory, and that they could be with me every day here on earth in my thoughts. And that when I finally get to heaven, Dylan and Dory won't remember why I haven't held them, hugged them, or kissed them. And I'm glad somebody told me that someday I would be blessed to talk about my unborn children to young men and women in high schools and colleges, to congregations and fundraisers and awareness events, and even to my very own son, who by doing so would commit his life to Christ and the miracle of defending life itself. I'm glad somebody told me to share this all with you.